producers who are anyway. So that would be my advice to you, and it really would be my advice. And I want you to, like succeed. We need more, more.
I'm taking all of it. It's been an amazing few weeks. It really has.
And like it's important that you do this for yourself. How I got into this industry, and it is 6 o'clock. I know we're about to start, but how I got into this industry is that I was writing. I can't tell you how many things I was writing over. What? It's now 18 years now. I was writing
Yes.
since I was a kid. I was writing shorts. I was writing novels, short films, screenplays. I was writing. I was writing. I would go to class during the day, write until midnight, and then repeat it as next. You would get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and I still only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But I would continue to do that, studying, working, etc. I would just keep writing because I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I knew I wanted to tell a story. And I would watch as many films as possible. I watch old films. You want to know how you can become a screenwriter? Watch old films. Honestly, watch the really old shit, like really, really, really old stuff. And I know I swore on a recording, but I think it's important that people do that.
I'll stop. I'll stop, then I'll start recording
No, no,
again.
no,
So
that's
we
fine. You can carry on. People need to.
can.
Whoever's listening to this recording also needs to listen to this as well. Watch the old films. Watch the old great stuff. Engage with film history. Watch everything from the French New Wave, Italian neorealism. Watch the French the French feminist movements of the 80s and the 90s. Watch as many films as possible. The queer cinema of Europe during the time of Pedro Almodovar was coming out. I mean, like, for example, you should watch as many different things as you possibly can. Watch African cinema. The Senegalese, right? What they were doing in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It makes our cinema right now look like child's play. And they had no CGI. They had no REs. They had RE flicks, but they didn't have any like reds and whatever. They had just literally had a camera, lights, and people, and really, really good storytelling. I mean, there's Osman Sembène, there's Jabel Mambeti. Scorsese, as much as he is controversial because he talks about like Marvel movies and stuff and says that they're not cinema. He's got a point. It's only cinema that can teach you how to make cinema. You can go watch Marvel movies all you want. You'll never learn how to make stories from watching Marvel movies. It's only engaging with movies that are about empathy, about showing people, about seeing lives unfold on screen and seeing how two people in a room fighting to the death because they love each other could be the most heartbreaking thing in the world. That's how you learn how to make movies. That's how you learn how to write. That's how you learn how to make something that means something. And that should be the barrier of entry for craft. Because if you do that, you might be able to speak to South African audiences who are so desensitized right this particular moment because our stories simply don't talk to them. They don't make them feel anything. They don't, reflect anything. I get that South Africans don't want to watch like horror violence. We live in the most violent country in the world. They don't want to watch that stuff on screen. But the most entertaining film could just literally be a kid walking around in his village, trying to get money to go to school. And that was a film. It was called Matwetwe. It was a town, and it blew up in the cinema. It was made for nothing, and it made so much money. It was ridiculous because people just wanted to watch it. They wanted to see something that was uplifting, that looked like them, and they engaged with it. It wasn't taxi war stuff. It wasn't Shaka Lembe. It was literally a guy trying to get the money to pay his deposit to go to Wits. And it was the most interesting film in the world, the most interesting film I'd ever seen, and it had no story whatsoever because nothing changes. He still doesn't have the money at the end, by the way. But you watch it, you love it, and you enjoy it, and it's just because that's what cinema is about. And what I really fear that by the time South Africa gets very good at making films, very good at cinema, right, that the damage is already done by the big streamers around the world. Because
Yeah.
and even spoke about this cinema, the future of it is IMAX and small movies, and everything in between is streaming movies. So I'm just hoping we get to the point where South African voice is so strong in cinema that we are not even that affected by it. But then that's another story for another day. Let's jump into this thing. By the way, can you see this shared screen? Can you see pitch deck for screenwriters?
I can. No, it says free plane documentation. Is
Oh
that the
no.
correct
Okay.
stream?
Let me just quickly double. Yeah. All right. There we go. It was the wrong thing shared. Great. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. on.
Perfect, perfect.
I'm
All
also
right,
just
everyone.
going to
Thank you.
send quick reminders. Thank you, Thabiso.
No problem, no problem. Well, I mean, we're in it already, and whoever was listening is probably listening to me ranting about things or something. I hope that I see a lot of familiar faces as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Let's jump straight into this. So today is going to be a bit of a different session from the previous two, where I was presenting information to you. What I really want to try to do today is just go through again the differences between a pitch Bible, if you want to refer to it as a pitch Bible, and a pitch deck that you'll be using to present. So something that you're either talking to a producer with, or you're going to be, I don't know, experimenting with your friends and your family, and you just want to get your pitching skills to a point where you're very competent. Yesterday's Mbizo revealed quite a few things about the current climate of the Writers Guild and the current climate of the people who are participants in all of the stuff that we do. There is definitely I'm not going to say a divide, but I will definitely mention that there is two sides to this conversation, where there are screenwriters who want to be expert screenwriters and really want to develop their craft to uh, record proportions, so that they are assured of being able to work in a world where you need to be internationally facing, you need to be internationally strong. And screenwriters who want to also do other roles, screenwriters who want to be producers as well, or possibly directors and so forth. And I really do believe that pitch decking is possibly speaking to all of these different things, but it's very much this session is going to be for people who want to take their pitch and present it. And that, which we need to be very careful about, can always skew into the lines of producing. And producers ultimately are the people that financiers, that distributors, that platforms want to talk to, because producers have the length, breadth, and brevity of experience required and needed, really, to carry out rather expensive film projects or expensive series projects to the point where the quality of them is acceptable and can be sent across the world. So, with that in mind, this session is going to be for people who want to, as an independent person, as an independent screenwriter, who wants to get really, really good at visually telling a story. This is for your own interest, and if you want to, then thereafter talk to a producer and quickly, within 20 or so minutes, uh, say the world. Explain the world. You'll have everything you need. There isn't going to be a need for you to have them read a screenplay that is 90 pages, 100 pages long. Within 20 minutes, you should be able to have a very, very decent conversation with them about the world, about everything in the world, who the characters are, and so forth. And better yet, you get to have an actual interaction with them, not something where they're reading something while you're trying to explain things to them. So that's the one side. The other side are, of course, the aspirant screenwriter producers or screenwriter directors who also want to get a handle on how they can present en masse to a couple of people. What are the things? What are the quirks? What are the things that you might find useful during that presentation that enables key engagement, number one, with you, and key engagement with the story you want to tell, and all of the aspects of that story that you want to present that are important. I am not speaking to of course, the potential directors to be, the ones who want to be directors. I do think that if you want to be a director, the craft of directing is so detailed, so rich, so full, that just by going down that line and fully committing to it and making things, and actually making small things and making larger and larger, and escalating as a result, by the time you get to the point where you need a pitch deck or a pitch treatment or whatever, you pretty much already know what you're doing. It'll just be a matter of formalizing all that information. So this isn't a conversation to that person. This is a conversation for screenwriters who are looking to become expert screenwriters and utilizing a pitch deck to help them, visually imagine a story, and also, want to learn how to get some pitching skills, and possibly those who want to be writer producers. But like I mentioned, then Bizo yesterday revealed that really the Writers Guild is catering towards two kinds of screenwriters. Ones who are film screenwriters and the others who are series screenwriters. And the current market in South Africa is skewed towards series screenwriters being people who work in teams, people who work in writers' rooms, who are also in some way or another becoming showrunners themselves, and possibly executive producers who are going to finance a project, bring it to a producer, to them to enable to be made. And that's, of course, legacy from that is the SABC, Mnet, ETV, being the people who would love to have people like that come through because they know that they're going to have quality of story and story itself being made by the same person who's going to get that thing made. Now, the streaming world is not that, how to put it on, but it's not that. It's very much this idea that, they would want to work with as few people as possible to get the project made. So you might find yourself in a situation where you're not going to be working in a writer's room. You're going to be working very much as one or two writers executing, 7 to 8 episodes to try and make something happen. Now, I know that currently the way it works is that all that Netflix and Amazon have done is to come to South Africa and say, all right, what is what you guys are doing? How is that working? Okay, great. Why don't we just replicate that? And here's a couple of original series that you can jump on board with. But they initially tried to make filmmakers the focal point of that conversation, and then filmmakers would then come in with their they'd hire writers teams and so forth to make that a conversation. I mean, to make that a thing where they can execute then the amount of episodes needed. But I do get a sense that things are changing very rapidly, and really comes down to the fact that Squid Game came into existence. Stranger Things really, really saw its big boon recently. And all of these things led to Netflix adopting a mindset of, well, if we have a filmmaker coming in to make a series, so long as we give them support they need, they can execute an 8 or 9 hour film. And as a result of that, you will have audiences engaged, switched on, and going to watch and watch and watch and watch and watch. And reality is that South Africa is yet to reach that craft level, that experience level of filmmakers being able to meet that thing. We have a lot of great series producers that are doing that. But with the future of the country looking the way it's looking, especially with DSTV, multi-choice at least, bleeding as much money as they are, bleeding subscribers and capital base, and SABC changing its entire funding mandate with regards to, we might see the demise of the telenovela in the next 5 to 10 years, which means that the biggest arm of employment for screenwriters might be at risk. So let's jump straight into it. So this idea of suiting your screenwriting pitch deck to a presentation comes down to how comfortable you are talking versus how comfortable you are presenting information. And how comfortable you are talking because it's the biggest, longest, marker of how successful a pitch might actually be for you. So when we talk about presenting, we're talking about a document that speaks for itself, that can be engaged with, and then maybe you can have a conversation around the document. When we're talking about talking, you're utilizing this document as a point-by-point conversation, beat-by-beat starter, but the engagement is primarily you. The engagement is primarily what you have to say, how you want to execute something, how you think the story could speak for itself when it's made and so forth. You are the medium for that story at that point, not the document. So how do you get your pitch deck, which you've worked on, you've slaved over, and hopefully in having gone through these past 3 sessions, you have gone from an outline, which you've created, you've gone from a screenplay, which you've created, and you've made this beautiful, beautiful document, which, much like the Stranger Things document, if I can bring it up over here, it's really extraordinary, it's really, really beautiful. I mean, it feels a bit like a book, doesn't it? It's how
It's how amazing it is. And if you go through the Stranger Things pitch Bible, if that makes any sense, it's designed as something that you should be able to read as a document. And it's something that, you know, you can imagine the Duffer Brothers sent through to Netflix, sent through as a introduction point for them to be able to talk, and they probably worked through an agent of theirs. And that conversation started, that conversation became a thing, and then they were able to then get into the room and pitch. I can guarantee you that this document that you're seeing right now is not the document that they actually presented their pitch with. What they may have presented their pitch with would have been a very slimmed down version of this document, something that would have beat by beat, point by point conversation starters with a company who would, well, with Netflix, but really an agent of Netflix at that point. And it would have been the first of many pitches that they would have to do around the same idea. So while this document may have been circulating around Netflix, around the different executives who need to sign off on a thing, this was definitely not the document that they were then talking to and talking from when they were engaging with an audience. And it comes down to two very simple things. Number one, there are a lot of words on the screen, as you can see. Now, them having a lot of words falls in line with this idea that if you have a lot of words, you're going to have people reading. And I'm pretty sure most of you are reading it right now. If I wasn't scrolling up and down like this the whole time, you'd be engaging more with this document than you would be with me listening. And that, for me, and for every pitch that I've ever been to and every pitch that I've witnessed, whenever your audience is reading a document versus listening to you and listening to you as a storyteller, you have already lost that pitch. You're already not memorable. You're already not seen as someone who's going to be the person who's going to carry the project over the line. So this, as beautiful as it is, as detailed as it is not the document you're going to be presenting with, either to a producer, or if you are a screenwriter producer, you know, in whatever capacity you are, this is not the document you'll be presenting with. You present this, you're going to be in trouble. Let's then sort of break down how we can get from one document to the other. I'm going to go back to the film that I made recently called Prime. And I'm going to go through some of the ways in which I transported this document into something that's read into versus something that I actually then would speak about in the pitch itself. And what points did I give to myself to be able to engage with my audience, and what little cue cards did I hide in the images so that I could remember what the pitch points could be as I'm talking en masse to at that time, Khalid Al-Zarati, who's the co-chair of the WGSA, was there with the pitch with me. If he remembers how many people there were on Zoom, he'll be able to answer. But I remember correctly, there were some 50 to 60 people, stakeholders, who were part of the pitch to see if we could get the financing from both Netflix and NFVF to make this film. So everything that you see over here is designed as a document to be read. As you can see, beautiful reference images from movies that would be very interesting reference movies for Prime, but these are all supporting the text that's already on screen. So we can see there's quite a few things over here, quite a few bits of information, text, and so forth. I'm just going to skip over the director's idea because you don't need to see that. And even like the world of the story, etc., etc. And all of these things were things that I would be able to speak about if I remove the images. So that's how critical it is for you to know your story. That's how critical it is for you to be able to understand stuff and be able to answer to it. Because while that was the send-in document, really, that anyone could read and so forth, the actual document that we then pitched with was this. So initially, we started off with a little conversation as to what films mean for us, in particular, both myself and Khalid. And from there, we went into, why this film, which, if you remember from the first session, is something that is very critical for your any form of pitching, because it speaks to your intention. And your intention is key. Your intention is key Because if you don't have the right intention for your story, if you're just making this to be famous or whatever, and not that the story needs to be made and you have to be the one doing it, it has to happen now. If it isn't that, it bleeds through. It bleeds in the conversation and no one will take you seriously. So I still have a lot of words over here. I still have a lot of things and a lot of concepts that anyone can read. And that is really on purpose, because initially in the beginning of my presentation, in the beginning of my pitch, I want to leave a couple of ideas in the back of the minds of the audience, i.e. the producer or the financier or the platform, that will build in major ways later down the pitch or will help inform the world around the story. But this isn't the story itself. These are just some of the concepts that we will be exploring in the story. Things like mental illness, the pressure on men to bury their mental and emotional health, i.e. boys don't cry, and how trauma can manifest itself, childhood trauma can manifest itself in terms of addiction and destructive behavior. These are all concepts and ideas. And really going further into it, when it came down to Prime, this is idea of racism in interracial relationship, and how two people, as much as they love each other, they don't communicate. They're susceptible to external forces coming in. These are all ideas, but I haven't yet spoken about the story. Now I get a chance to actually start engaging with the story. And everything that you saw in the written document then becomes something that I speak about. And the one thing I did for myself was I made sure that every image that is here, as well as every title, that was put down over here, ended up being a mnemonic for myself in terms of going through the story. And it became down to, this particular image on the left-hand side spoke of the opening act of the film, or at least the opening inciting incident of the film where the main character's father dies. And then from there, this escalation of things that occur, and then this breakdown on one's faith, and all of these different things leading to a seduction, then the possibility of madness, but really it's none of that stuff at all. It's actually someone being possessed. At length, I could speak about the story, and I would have my audience listening to what I'm saying versus reading any information on screen. And because of that, and because of this idea of presenting images that spoke to what I was speaking about, there's a much deeper psychological connection that happens to the story for whoever's listening to it. I am starting to prong the thing that cinema is driven by, this idea of us sitting around the fireplace, talking to each other about things that have happened, about stories that have occurred, and possible things that could happen. A pitch is really about getting people around the fireplace and listening to a story being told, and listening to that story being told down to the point where we could be the ones executing that story if you give us the time and attention to help us make this thing happen. So as you can see, there is no wall of text at all during this critical part, because I need whoever's listening to the story, or at least listening to my pitch and engaging with me, whether it's a producer, whether it's a family member, whether it's all of these things, I need them to feel an emotional connection. And that emotional connection needs to come through you as the pitcher and the storyteller. And again, your intention for this story, which we spoke about last week, your intention for this film or the series or whatever it could be, your intention is going to bleed through on screen as well, because of the nature of the story, which deals a lot with, silent forms of violence, racism, eroticism in many aspects. You are going to find the images are speaking to that stuff as well. Shame, pain, faith, something sensual, then madness, possibly, and then all coming down to this idea of possession and the supernatural. If you are in a position where you are speaking this stuff, your pitch won't be boring. People want to know what happens next. And you can also optimize on time. If you spend a long time getting that right, where you're speaking, a minute or 2 minutes per slide, you find yourself in a sort of rhythm. And that rhythm then becomes something that you are able to carry through and take a 20-slide presentation and maybe say it in 15 minutes and give the audience an opportunity, 5 or so minutes that they need to be able to ask you questions. And you might find yourself, you know, in a position where, because you haven't given all the information in the pitch document, or at least the pitch deck that they've seen on screen, they want to know more. They want to engage more. They want to find out what happens here and there. What are the twists and all of these things, so that you might quickly find that those 5 minutes allotted turn into 20 minutes or something crazy like that. But the number one thing you do not want to be doing is wasting people's time. You do not want to take an entire pitch just speaking what's already on the screen, and as a result, you have no questions. I mean, you have no time for questions and answers, because your pitch is not going to be memorable. They're going to get through it and just want to get out of it as quickly as possible. So really, the key idea when it comes to presenting a pitch is lowering the amount of words on screen, and lowering the amount of words and replacing it with an appropriate image that speaks to the thing that you want to talk about. And the beauty of this is that if you are able to talk about your story to the point where you have full confidence in it, and you have full, you know, grasp of everything that the story comprises of, you have a very, very, you know, great chance of being able to do that for any person you actually encounter. Because remember that if you're pitching to your DSTVs or your ETVs, or even possibly one day the big streamers, that will not only be that's not the last pitch that you're going to do. You're going to have many more pitches. Trust me on that. So many executives that need to go through the process. Now, that goes as far as the world of the story as well. I mean, as you saw in the other version, which is here, the world of the story has tons of you know, concepts and ideas and words, just wall of words, which disappears entirely when you're talking about the world of the story that's here. You just give them images. At the time when we did the pitch, we hadn't yet made the decision to go down to Cape Town, so we were still really focused on telling the story in Johannesburg, and we had very appropriate images that spoke of the many different elements of Johannesburg versus the, you know, the elements that would be in Cape Town. So again, limitation on words. I'm just going to skip over that. You know, when we're talking about set, when we're talking about, you know, makeup, you know, wardrobe, all of these different feelings, you will see that there's no, there are no words. There are no words other than key ideas that I could speak to. Now, of course, this is skewing over into the direction of something, but I do believe that as a screenwriter, if you want to go into more detail about the world, about all of these different nice things that you want to be able to present to your audience, this is also a great opportunity then to go into something I like to call as the concepts of the story. So these are the concepts that will help your story be understood even more in detail from the screenwriting perspective, from the storytelling perspective, than they would ordinarily get from a producer or a director. So things like, you know, what do the different elements of the story symbolize? How are some of the concepts expressed in the film? You know, who's the big bad? All of these different things, all of these things that are not really attached to the synopsis per se, beat by beat, but which help fill in the blanks, which really help flesh out the world. Now, these are really interesting ideas that you can actually then transpose into the pitch deck, the pitch presentation. If you can imagine, you know, if you could bear with me and imagine seeing no text whatsoever and just seeing images, you could speak these ideas. It means, of course, your pitch is going to be pretty long. And if you've reached the point where you are, in fact, you know, pitching further and talking to many more executives, and you have the time, you know, the luxury of maybe going an hour or two into your pitch, then this is a great opportunity for you to just really engross them in the world. Because if they're going to be spending this amount of money on your story and, you know, financing you, or as a producer committing to a relationship with you for the next 2 to 3 years, they want to see how invested you are. They want to see how invested you are as a screenwriter, as a storyteller. And that level of investment is not just you knowing your story, it's seeing the story. Is your story going to be a film or a series? You know, is it going to be this thing which is a marker of the visual medium we like to call cinematic expression? If it is going to be that, then you should be versed in the language of cinema. You should be able to present some images at least. You know, screenwriting isn't novel writing. You are planning in your screenplay. You're planning the images that will be seen. You're planning the emotions that will be expressed by an actor. You're planning all of these different elements. You're not directing it, of course, but you are putting the groundwork into place. You're putting the foundational material that's, you know, designed to be made, designed to be acted, designed to be developed, designed to be shot. So if that's going to be something that you have in mind, why not use a pitch deck to help you flesh out these ideas, help you flesh out these things? Keeping in mind that difference between a pitch Bible, as you can see over here, or coming back to Stranger Things documents over here, a pitch Bible is not a pitch deck that you'll be presenting with. A pitch deck that you'll be presenting with, as you can see, is very limited amounts of information in the document that goes onto screen, more image driven, it's more concept driven, and all the things that you can leverage to be able to get a connection with wherever you are presenting to. I just want to plug the team that I worked with over here. And, all these things which leads to a highly efficient, highly stylized, and very, very intentional document that speaks very, very closely to the story you want to make, and the story you want to make and the partners you're trying to get on board with. Now, ultimately, if you are creating a pitch presentation or a pitch document, etc., you're going to be spending resources. Now, if you're as a screenwriter creating something for yourself, making something on PowerPoint or Keynote or even Canvas and so forth to help you create a little mini pitch deck for yourself so that you can sort of look at all the information together, look at all the materials together, and maybe help that second or third rewrite that you need to achieve on your screenplay or etc. But if you're going to be going into a pitch or a pitching session, if you do not have a producer behind you or producer with you doing the pitch with you, the quality of your work is going to be compromised, because the producer is probably going to have the resources, the networks needed to be able to create a quality pitch deck that will be designed by a graphic designer, probably then engage with a director at some point. And really, they will have all the key information, like things like budgets, things like scheduling, things like all of the delivery schedule, delivery capabilities, etc. All of these things which screenwriters really should never speak about, because you have no idea what you're going to be presenting in terms of that. Most screenwriters have never ever drawn up a budget, or have engaged with the production of something beyond development and production. They've never finished off a project. They've never had to then go into the multiple sales meetings to sell their project. To leverage contracts to be able to get a licensing deal. All of these things which are the realm and the right of the producer to be able to achieve. So pitch decking for screenwriting can only get you so far. But if you are someone who's going to become a producer one day and you've mastered screenwriting, or you've mastered being able to create a concept and put it out there, as many producers around the world who become showrunners for great series have done as well, then yes, a pitch deck and creation of a pitch deck is going to help you. It's going to help you go a long way, because that's probably something that you can use as a starting point conversation for financiers, for distributors, and possibly platforms if you're lucky enough to have that conversation. But if you are a screenwriter producer and you walk into the room and DSTV is asking for something, you at least have a pitch deck that you can spend 20 minutes or so talking to DSTV with, or better yet, with Indigenous or AAA or Gravel Road if you're a film producer, film screenwriter, film producer. So that's, in a nutshell, a really rough way of looking at how you can transform things that are meant to be read into things that are meant to be spoken about. And if you can master that for yourself, if you can master the ability of taking an image and letting it speak 1,000 words, then your pitch presentation becomes strong. Your pitch presentation becomes supporting of a world being developed in the audience's mind, in the producer's mind, and a world in which they can develop for themselves and have a personal connection to, and more than likely leverage as something that they can finance because they can see it. And seeing it is believing it. To believe me when I mentioned that, I know it's a really dumb idea, but when it comes down to the name of the game, especially in filmmaking, not series making, people don't read, they want to see something. And this is probably where you find the best benefit of pitch decking and presenting it to someone will come in. Okay, great. So I'm just going to open up the platform for us to have a conversation about things. I see that there are a couple of questions here, but please put up your hands. Would love to engage with everyone. Let me just first break this share so I can see everything in one go. And please, this is an interactive thing. It's completely interactive. We should be engaging. We should be talking. I don't want this to be a case where I'm trying to teach anyone anything. I think this is, the Writers Guild. The beauty of the Writers Guild is that we can leverage network and relationships to be able to learn together as a community. So I'm going to just go straight into the questions for now, and then if you do have a question, put up your hand, and then if we find ourselves a bit dry for questions, we'll go back into recapping the entire process from week one as to how a screenwriter can create a pitch deck for themselves. But over here, I have a question from Rachel, and I don't want to address this here right now. So Rachel, you say that, so hello, I have a story and I would like to speak to you about it. Can you send your email address, please? Thank you. So I'm going to be very point blank honest with you, Rachel. I rarely at all take stories from other people, mainly because I'm not a producer who, needs stories to finance to work in a business. I am a screenwriter just like you. I am a screenwriter. I'm also a director. So I normally work with producers and production companies to help achieve the stories they want to tell. I take my own stories and my own screenplays and leverage that in the financing arm to be able to create the film and put it out into the world. I do not take basically unsolicited stories, and I'm not a person that can open the door for you to financing arms and so forth. And I want to be explicitly clear about that, because very few screenwriters are also screenwriters who produce. And if that's the case, if there are screenwriters who produce, they're usually trying to get their own stuff made. So what I would tell you, Rachel, is number one, get to film marts. Get to film marts like Durban Film Mart, Fame Week, and any other platform. If you can afford MIPCOM as well, please do. Go to it. Talk to producers. Have a little one pager with you. Have something that is a great image. Or if you're so inclined, get your script registered with the WGSA. Be on the purple list. Or do all of these things. Attend news awards and so forth. But the primary thing is get to network with the producers around you. Get to network with those people who are looking for content, who are looking for things that can present towards distributors, who are looking, for the next new idea and the next new screenwriter they can work with, that they can leverage a very long and hopefully healthy relationship with and create things. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to put you in touch with anyone. I wish I had that answer as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't be trying to finance my own films at the same time. And I do know that many screenwriters are working, share my frustrations with this. But the best thing you can do for yourself is go to film marts, do cold calling, do cold emailing to producers, production companies. Try get into the door that way. That's the best way in which you can actually work as a screenwriter. And again, I'm going to emphasize the story that I spoke about in week one of this 3-week session. Christopher McQuarrie, the screenwriter at the time of The Usual Suspects and the screenwriter / producer of all the Mission Impossible films that have come out recently. Christopher McQuarrie went from creating the screenplay for Usual Suspects to not working for at least 7 years in LA, to getting anything made, because he had a story, or he had the mindset that all the studios needed to listen to him about the story he wanted to tell. And he would go into all the pitch meetings, and because Hollywood they have a very polite way of saying no to you, they will listen to your story and tell you, this is absolutely something that we should have a look at. How about you send it to us? We promise to get back to you. And that's always a no. Instead of, no, we really want to get you in touch with this person because this person can help you develop this thing further, and we want to make this. So they have a very, very nice way of telling you no. Now, Chris McQuarrie spent years trying to get his story made, until it came to a point when he realized that no one wanted to actually have his story. When he realized what the business of film actually is, what the business of producers and studios actually are, he realized that he needed to change his mindset. He needed to change the way he was approaching the conversation and the value he was presenting to these prospective producers, prospective studios. And it came down to him going to every single studio that he approached before and said, okay, I have an ability to write. You have projects that you need to meet. You have projects that you need writers for. You have projects that you need to be engaging with to be able to create. How can I help you? And he went everywhere with that mindset. How can I help you? How can I help you? How can I help you create the projects you need to be creating? How can I enable the development of these projects? How can I enable the rewrites that you need? All of these things. And he found the doors open wide to him at a point or another, and he jumped onto a project called Valkyrie, which was a Tom Cruise project in which he was playing one of the defectors of the Nazi party at the time when Hitler was about to, I think it was right before he was about to go into one of the big blitzes that he was going to go into. Chris McQuarrie came because Tom Cruise needed someone to rewrite the story for him, needed to rewrite the screenplay and punch it up. And Chris did a great job with that, and the rest is history. Chris McQuarrie has worked on every Tom Cruise movie ever since, every movie that Tom Cruise has produced on. And I got to the point where Tom Cruise, recognizing the fact that Chris was also a director, said, I trust you, let's go make movies together. And the rest is history. All because he changed his mindset from, I have a story, I need you guys to pay, to finance, to, I need to help you guys. I want to help you guys. I have the ability to help you guys. What can I do for you? That conversation opened the doors for him. And I do believe that in our industry, that is a conversation starter. And it is actually the de facto way in which screenwriters enter the industry, in which screenwriters are able to leverage their own experience. Because you find that a producer that's willing to put you onto a project to help, to achieve that project, you do that a couple of times, they'll be like, okay, wait, have you got an idea? What idea is yours? I want to hear it. So how can we help you now? That's how it happens, because that's how business works. And that's how the business of film also works. So the reason why I'm speaking to your question is because I really do believe that that's the mindset you need to be adopting, and really going to film mods and really just cold calling and trying to engage with producers en masse. This, unfortunately, is not the platform for you to be able to get the foot in the door. But hopefully, if you do this, the hard thing that all screenwriters suck at doing, you might find yourself being able to get to meet someone who, with maybe even your story, they can pitch to the SABC, because the SABC needs something that you are presenting right now. Okay, so Lungelo, before I jump into, I just want to, onto you, sorry. That's even worse, right? I just want to get Valente's question out the way first. So Valente is asking, would this be the second pitch deck after whomever saw the first wordy pitch deck and invited you to a pitch at the end? Yes, very much that. This idea of a shortened image-based pitch deck only is going to be the thing you're going to be walking into the room with a producer or a financier or a platform. This is the thing that you're going to be pitching from. And it is the second pitch deck. You have your first one. That's the one you probably found yourself, earning the meeting from. If you sent that pitch deck to your indigenous and your AAA and so forth, and they said, perfect, how about you come and meet the financier? How about you come and meet the producer who we want to put you in touch with? That'll be the case. Okay, Lungelo, please go for it.
Hello, everybody. Lungelo Kuzwa here, writer, director. Just a couple of questions then. Number one, I saw when you're showing us the stuff that there was the target audience. You sort of had that at the end of the thing. And in my head, I was thinking, you said this sort of more visual pitch deck. You introduce yourself as a filmmaker and your team. You tell us the intention why this film needs to be made and urgently. And then the story, then the world of story, then the concept behind the story. But I thought, wouldn't target audience come in when you talk about the intention of the film? This needs to be made, and this is whom it would connect to in terms of the target audience. So I was just wondering, when would you actually speak to target audience in this pitch deck? And I know there's no one correct answer. And then I have a follow-up question about, if this is the second pitch deck, then what do you call the first one that is more, sort of like Stranger Things, that is more, it still has images, but it's more text heavy? Well, what's the difference between the two, I guess? That's it.
Oh, by accident. Are you seeing the slide over here that says why this film? Yeah. So why this film, number one, it's intention, no doubt, right? It's the intention of why you're trying to create the story and all of these things. But it's also at this point feeding into the idea of who your potential target audience could be. The reason why at least myself and hopefully the filmmakers that I've worked with and the producers I've worked with, why we bring the target audience right at the end of the story is because we don't want the story to be impacted, at least in the person who's listening to it. We don't want that information to come through first. We want the story first, not the target audience. We want the story in itself to exist first in the mind of the person, for that personal connection to be attached to them, versus the producer or the financier thinking about, oh, wait, if it's this target audience, this story is not going to work here. If this is not working here, oh, you can't have this. You can't have this. It becomes that quick. It becomes that thing that's happening in the brain. You can't have this. You can't have this. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do this. Instead of them really just focusing on, okay, this is the concept of the story. This is how the story plays out. This is the thing. Okay, I can see how this could be meaningful for someone. I don't know exactly who yet, but by the time we get through to the excuse me, let me just need to make this thing something I can actually navigate. Apologies. All right, hopefully you're still able to see the screen. There we go. By the time we get to this target audience thing, we are again speaking to a target audience that is, the target audience that we envisioned in the very beginning of this conversation. But we don't have any of the preconceptions of what that target audience wants during the conversation about the story. We are simply stating, okay, this story that you've fallen in love with, we think that it could be this target audience that's going to appreciate it and take it up en masse. But that putting the cart before the horse thing can kill your pitch. Because if you have a situation where your audience or your producer or your financier is only thinking about your target audience while they're engaging with your story, they're not seeing the possibilities of a different target audience. They're not seeing the possibilities of something else that will work because they're only thinking about the target audience you've already implanted into their mind. And they're gauging and judging your story based on that. And it could be that your target audience, because you're just a screenwriter or a producer or a director, and you're not a distributor, your target audience might be wrong. And as a result of it, because your target audience is wrong, you have completely, swung the story the wrong direction. You swung the producer or the audience member in the wrong way, instead of actually just giving the story the opportunity it needed to actually live in the minds of the person first. And for that person to say, okay, I know they're wrong with the target audience, but I know exactly where this could go. Because I've already listened to your story, I've already engaged with it, I've already built up this narrative in my mind thanks to what you've done. So I know you can execute the story, but I know you're not an expert in target audience. So that's okay. I know where it should go. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, the problem with target audience is that you're dealing with psychology as well, the psychology of your target audience. So if you don't know your target audience, best thing to do is not put a target audience, target market thing. Just say, we want this thing to go on Netflix, or we want this thing to go to Showmax or Amazon Prime. But because, I have the experience of dealing with these things, I can speak as to where these things could go, because of the genre, because of this and everything. I think it should go appropriately here, it should go there, etc., etc. But I always have a caveat when I'm pitching to say that this is an idea of where it could go. I am hoping that we can have a further conversation together to figure out where it should go. Okay. But I know that was just the first question. What other questions do you have? I'm more than happy to jump into it. You're muted. Muted.
Sorry. Thanks. The other question was just what's the difference between this pitch deck versus the one that you would send into the company to get the whatever 30-minute presentation opportunity to then pitch to this. This one's obviously a more visual pitch deck, if you will. But then do you have to get then is it like when you create a pitch deck initially, you'll throw in obviously the best and most compelling images, but you will write it out because you need to electronically send it to people and they need to textually learn what the story is. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, let's call him, let's call her, let's call the team in and have them formally pitch to our team. So it's sort of two versions of pitch deck, where one is both text and image driven, and then the second one, which is a live presentation, is then you basically go and edit out you minimize the text and talk, bullet points, keywords, short phrases, and then the images now are in the forefront. Well, the images plus your words.
I mean, it's exactly that. It's the whole process you just mentioned is exactly that. You're going to be first creating a document that's meant to be read and meant to be engaged with, meant to be paged through and enjoyed, because it's a visual or visual word story thing that you're going to be playing around with. But when it comes time to the pitch, hopefully you're there with a producer, because I have not included the information that we did have for our pitch for Prime, which included things like budget, schedule, deliverables, this, that, who the key HODs and things that we leveraged as producers, directors as well, et cetera, to have that conversation. So that point, you don't want too many words, because too many words are going to overflood the conversation you're trying to have. The story should be secondary to presenting hard information at that point, So you are going to be creating these two pitch decks, but definitely the shortened version is derived from the first one anyway. So you put the hard work and sweat and effort into getting a great document that's full of images, but more importantly speaks to your story. And then when it comes time to go to that presentation, you can quite quickly go back and just, remove all the words and memorize the stuff and things that you need to be able to do in order to present it. But it is very much that. Okay, hope I answered the question. Yeah. Thanks, man. Can't wait to see your stuff on screen, man. Can't wait to see your stuff. Okay, so
Inshallah.
we have a quick inshallah. We have a question here from Tailor. So Tailor is asking, I have added keyword. Sorry, let me just quickly move this down over here. Tailor is asking, I have added keywords and terms to my pitch decks before, so that I can speak to them without forcing people to read information, like you said, but listen to my explanation instead. What do you think is a good balance between text and imagery, where I'm conveying the information whilst keeping the listener, viewer engaged? So in terms of balance, this is always a difficult thing for me to sort of, give, a one-size-fits-all answer to it, because it really does depend entirely on how you like to pitch and what stories you like to tell, and how that's going to carry through with, the pitch itself. But I can tell you that if you want people to feel something, if you want people to engage with your presentation or your story on a emotional, psychological level, it's best at that point to only be having keywords and images. If you want to be presenting facts and concepts and things that are needed for your audience to grasp finer details, grasp bigger ideas that aren't directly related to your story, but perhaps to the execution of how you might get the story made, how you might get the story written, etc., what your target audience could be, that's probably when you should probably have the words and the words, the text, a lot of text being in place of just having images. But emotional, psychological connection is probably where you need to have them listening to your voice and seeing an image, because then again, it goes all the way back to being the fireplace, and the fireplace, sitting down the fireplace and listening to whoever's in your community talking to you about something that happened a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away. If you're going to be dealing with target audience and intent and so forth, yeah, it should be a great opportunity for you to be putting up some information, putting up some ideas, things that are things that people can read and very quickly read and continue listening to you. So what's important over here is that you should be able to browse through this information while listening to me talk, or I am speaking to this information. So I'll be talking about the expression of violence in many forms, etc. So I am talking to you and reading along with you, but only here. I'm not doing it here, for example. So I hope that answers the question as to the fine balance in between. But I always coming down to, what part of your pitch are you talking about? Are you doing a storytelling? or you're doing a fact-finding, fact-presenting. And hopefully, with that in mind, it gives you an indication as to what elements you're going to be cleaning up in that presentation. Great. Thank you, Tailor. Good luck. I want to see your stuff on screen. I really, really do want to see your stuff on screen. Valente is asking, hi, Malefi.
Oh, sorry for that. I will ask the question afterwards.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, go for it. It's a written question, so why don't you go for it? Next time, if you can, just put up your hand, and then I'll definitely get to you. But
sorry for
go
that,
for your question.
man. I've been looking for that hand. I don't see it here. But I've just have one question.
Yeah.
Two. I've seen you said during the presentation of the pitch deck, the second one especially, minimize the text and increase on the pictures, right? So the question is, those pictures that I see you've also used here, do you have permission from like these ones? Do you have permission from filmmaker of The Death in a Family, Tainted Love, Losing My Religion, for you to can use them? And the same applies. The first week, you said when we present, to give an idea, we should give the idea of what other films fall within that category of the film that I want to do. I should show an example of Prime or of A Death in a Family and stuff like that. So even the same question there, those films that I'm going to quote, if I have to quote Prime or if I have to quote Tainted Life to give an idea of where my film is going to fall under which category, do I need permission from these guys or their distributors, producers, or directors to avoid, messing up their rights and stuff? Or do I just go there without any permission or so? Thanks.
Molefi, thank you very much. It's actually a brilliant question. I think it's something that you're going to be quite surprised with the answer for. Let me just see if I can get the thing up first. I want to just quickly get some things up first for you so that you can see them. I'm definitely going to be answering your question because I think you've asked something that is very important, and I believe I have tricked you. Now I've tricked you in a way that I hope that you won't hate me. You won't hate me whatsoever for, but I'll show you how I've tricked you. So I'm going to I'm going to share something. Okay, can you see this? You can see it, right? Unsplash.
Yes.
You can see it. Okay, great. So Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels. Do you see all of these images that are here? Let's go into this one, for example. These are all images that you can freely download and use as copyright-free stock images. These websites have it in their, the rights and usage categories that you can utilize their stock images for presentations. You can utilize their stock images for even on websites and so forth, because they have entered into agreements with all of their photographers and content creators for their stuff to be available freely online. All you have to do is to have rights and attributions to them. And I can see Emily says there's also Shot Deck, Pixar, all of these places, right? So I'll tell you. So the only thing is that you need to attribute it to them. So for me, if ever I have a pitch deck that's going out into the world, or I'm utilizing something in a trailer or whatever, you'll always see at the last page or something, you'll see attribution of this image and so forth. Because this is a closed off platform and it's not meant to be delivered out to the rest of the world. I mean, this particular conversation, I not necessarily have to do that. But if you're going to be presenting any information out there, just be aware that you have to do proper attribution. But that being said, all of these things over here, right? All of these things over here are great imagery that you can use for your pitch decks. And this is where I got almost every image you see over here is a stock image that is going to be used in my pitch deck. Almost every image. There are very, very, very few examples of things that I don't have stock images for. And those are really very direct reference images that I need to utilize for for the presentation itself, because I'm speaking of a very particular form which I want to use as reference. So because of the fact that you are not displaying the film in its full right or showing the film in its full its full form, and you're not sharing it when you're doing a pitch deck, you're actually just using a still that you can get it freely online from Film Grab or anything like that. Because of the fact that you are doing that, you don't necessarily have to go to the producer of that film or the distributor and so forth to get permission. But that being said, do not commit piracy. Do not share films out there. Don't do any of these things. These are all unlawful acts that violate IP. However, a lot of films that are out there are, the stills of them are things that can be used reasonably freely, at least in fair use. But only if you are going to be doing it in a, I would say, non-commercial environment. Non-commercial environment in this particular case is you're not going to be selling this pitch deck to the producer or the distributor and so forth. You're using it as a educational tool as to what your story could be. This is not a deck that you're going to be monetizing. You're going to be monetizing the creation of your story and the and et cetera, et cetera. I hope that makes sense. So you can use this image as a reference image as long as you properly appropriate it and you're not claiming that this is your image. But in terms of very, important imagery that you're going to be utilizing for your pitch and your pitch deck in particular, use Unsplash, Pixabay, and everything. So the trick that I was mentioning, the trick that's here, is that, again, all of these images you see over here, these are all images from Unsplash and Pexel, Pixabay, etc. Right? These are all images from there. But further to that, these titles that you see over here, excuse me, let me just get this back up. These titles that you see over here, these are all song titles. They're not movies. None of them are movies. These are all song titles, very popular songs that if you listen to those songs, these are songs that I felt were spiritually tied to Prime. So things like Losing My Religion, Tainted Love, Death in a Family, Hurt by Nine Inch Nails, Hug. These are all song titles. And then the only thing that is like a film or series title is Stranger Things, because I just wanted to leverage this idea of, you're talking to Netflix, you want to leverage a property that they know and they love as well. And there's definitely an aspect of Prime that speaks to the world of Stranger Things. But that was the whole reason why you see these names over here. But all of these images are available online. And Valente has actually put a little bit of an additional thing you can do if you search for Creative Commons 0 images as well. The Creative Commons is this idea that things are created for the common good and they're freely sent around. But even with Creative Commons, remember that there are particular attribution rules that exist. So if you're going to be utilizing something that has not been cleared for commercial purposes, unlike Unsplash and so forth, that thing you create out of it is going to have to be used in a non-commercial manner as well. So it's like for like. That's the right word. So just be careful and always find out what the attribution and the copyright usages and rules are. If you have an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, you have Adobe stock, you can utilize that. If you want to use news imagery from Reuters and so forth, you normally find that I think it's Reuters, I think it's someone else, has this vast library of things, but you have to pay a lot of money for utilizing it. But yeah, what you're seeing over here is a combination of stock imagery and music titles to fool you into believing there's a reference for. But I hope that answers your question. Just let me know if it doesn't answer your question. Are you good with that?
Indeed. Thanks, brother.
Okay, no worries. Good luck.
Sure.
All right. So Dalia, Valente, okay, going to Valente's question. On some pitching sessions, we also use video references in combination with the pitch deck, but that is mostly from the director's vantage point. Isn't this the second image-driven pitch deck, the domain of the director, producer? Wouldn't a wordy pitch deck be more suitable for a writer to get his story across to producers? Yes, definitely. And in fact, the first pitch deck that I think you're sending through to be read by a producer, in order for them to, to engage with you in a conversation, is going to be the wordy version. But when it comes down to you presenting a pitch deck or a pitch idea as a screenwriter to maybe one or two more producers, or maybe a group of executives of that production company, wanting to see your story, you need to be careful in not having people reading what's on the presentation screen that's next to you versus listening to you talk. And really, if you're going to be presenting something that's going to be presented, on a screen in the background, you don't want to disappear. You don't want to fade away in the minds of the people who are engaging with the pitch. So that's when you do curtail things and just present like you used to do in school. Is it the domain of the director and the producer? Yes. But that's if you're talking to a financier. If you're trying to get a producer to buy your story or to work with you, I think it's more than perfectly fine for you to pitch a story in this manner to them, but to a producer. If you're trying to pitch it to a financier and you're saying that you are a producer, but you're not a producer, be prepared for pain. Be prepared for heartbreak, because that's what's going to happen. Almost no financier, distributor, or platform like Netflix and so forth is going to be engaging with your story it's going to be engaging in your story if you don't have a producer who's going to execute that story as part of that package deal. Because they're not going to finance you. They want to finance someone who can carry this through to the end of the line, and that's a producer. And that's why the relationship between writer and producer is very, very important. If you want to make films, unlike writing books, it's a team effort. It's an effort in which you're leveraging experience, you're leveraging expertise, and more importantly, you're leveraging things that other people can do that you can't do in order to make that film. Now, that being said, if, for example, you are pitching to a distributor like Indigenous, and Indigenous is like, okay, look, you don't have a producer, that's fine. You don't have a director, that's fine. Just come through. We want to talk to you because we love this idea. You're going to find that they're going to want to put you in touch with a producer, or they're going to want to, or SABC and whatever, because they know people who they've reliably seen execute for, the people who they are clients of, etc. And these people need these stories. So I always say that if you are in a position where you are able to just be a screenwriter in the room telling a story, you pitching that story with an effective pitch deck goes a long way. Do not misrepresent yourself, however, as a producer and as a director if you're trying to get that thing made with a financier. Because number one, if you're a director and you don't have a very healthy show reel behind you and a list of projects that you've directed from short to big to small, large, whatever, if you don't have that behind you, you have no credibility as a director whatsoever. And no business person in their mind is going to entrust millions of rands towards your creative effort if you've never proven yourself before. So that would be the thing that I have to say with regards to that. And yes, you are definitely getting into the domain of directors and producers if you are trying to find financing for yourself on your project without the expertise of a producer or a director on board in your project. But if you are engaging with the producer, or by some miracle you've managed to get to a distributor who wants to hear your story, a pitch deck can't help. I mean, a pitch deck won't hurt. Sorry, a pitch deck won't hurt. Okay, hopefully I've answered your question, Belinda. Okay, so we have Trevor Sachs next. Trevor, would you have written your script pilot by the time you have your pitch deck together? And would the Netflix streamers not be interested in seeing the quality? Yes, 100%. It's completely advised, especially from me and from everyone else around the world who's involved in the film industry, to have your script and to have your pilot episode, your pilot teleplay, to have that with you. That's actually we spoke about it in the first week. You only make a pitch deck after you've developed an outline, after you've created your story, and maybe that's side by side with you creating a screenplay, side by side with you creating a teleplay. Only when you've exhausted yourself as a screenwriter in terms of what you can bring to the project, then you can maybe then engage with this idea of a pitch deck and wanting to get out to the world. This is not the starting point, because, which I think we'll probably go through if the normal questions at the end of the pitch deck is derived from your outline. the pitch deck and your outline is derived from the screenplay, and vice versa. So maybe you're the kind of person who likes planning your screenplays before you write them. So you would have derived an outline before you've written the screenplay, or you're someone who pants it first and then you rewrite it afterwards with an outline. But either way, your outline and your screenplay had to have come first, especially if you are the screenwriter. So it's more than advisable. It is necessary, because after the pitch happens, they're going to ask you, send us the thing now so we can get in conversation with our financiers if you're successful. Okay, Trevor, I hope I answered your question. Lungelo, I suppose in film arts and cold calling, you send a one-pager, and if they respond, they want more, then you email version 1, images and text, the form of the pitch deck. Version 2 only come into play when you're, in a live online pitch to the 100%. 100%. And not only that, I would advise you, anything beyond a one-pager, get an NDA. Get an NDA in place, especially if you've never worked with this person before. They don't come recommended to you by, network and so forth. And this is a complete random thing. Get an NDA in place before going beyond anything than a one-page. And in fact, if you can get an NDA in place for a one-page, that's great. Never just send your one-pages out one ton in cold calls. Cold calls are like this. Hi, I've seen, hi, I'm so-and-so and so-and-so. I just watched your film or series on this platform. I loved it. I loved all the different elements over there. I love this, that. I think that if we create stories like this, we can achieve this in our society, etc. I am a screenwriter who'd love to work with you. Can we, maybe if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to buy some coffee or some lunch and just have a 5-minute or 10-minute conversation with you. Please let me know if that's appropriate, if you're available, if you could pencil me in. And that's like cold calling. That's how it keeps going. And you keep doing that over and over again. And if they don't reply the first time, email them again. Be a pester in that way. But don't just send your material out into the world. That's the quickest way for your stuff to not be made by you and for it to appear on DSTV and Mzansi Magic. Lungelo, go for your question.
Sorry, yeah, I had another question about what you just said before this. As a writer, do you have to have the screenplay done? Because one of the things that I'm thinking of that I'm going to do is come up with a concept, come up with some kind of a treatment, summary, outline, and then do the pitch deck in order to get funding from, say, an NMBF or KZN, FC or whatever, to then go ahead and actually write the first draft of said screenplay or whatever the case might be. So just because I hear what you're saying now, and obviously if you have at least a first draft, that's great. But I thought you could also just come up with a concept and have a strong outline plus the pitch deck in order to convince a funder to give you the money to actually develop the screenplay. I have a follow-up question as well, but yeah, that's the first one.
Okay. There's actually two questions that you've asked in one question. It's because we're in a very specific environment in South Africa in terms of financing. So I'm going to actually, let me just see if the things are there. I'm going to actually answer Dalea's second question as well while I'm talking to you about this, because Dalea has a question over here. When we're on the subject of copyright, I see a copyright tag at the bottom of each of your slides. For a writer, should I register the pitch deck before pitching, sending it out to maintain copyright for it? So the South African copyright law is very particular. The South African copyright law is you can copyright something if you are proven to be the author of an expressed work of creativity. Now, an expressed work of creativity in terms of screenwriting is a screenplay. It is a detailed scriptment outline that goes into detail, that has dialogue, that has all of the different aspects and so forth. And there's also a book, it is a song, and it is a authored form. But the point of it is that it is a creative work that is authored, and even an outline isn't enough. By the way, it isn't enough to be able to copyright it. Whenever I pitch something, whenever I go forth out into the world to get something financed, I always write the first draft of it. I always make sure there's a script that exists somewhere, because in South African law, as a screenplay is made and I put copyright 2023 or 2024, Thabiso Christopher with a little copyright symbol on it, and I email it to myself or I print it out and I email it to someone else, I have copyright of that thing forever and ever, amen, unless I choose to have that copyright handed over to someone else with a document that states that I have given permission for this to happen. So you cannot copyright a pitch deck, believe it or not, but I can copyright the screenplay. I can copyright the screenplay. I can copyright the story. And what you're seeing in this pitch deck over here, because it's a pitch deck that came from me and I own the story rights to it, I'm doubling down on the fact that I own prime the screenplay, prime the expression of the idea, because I wrote the screenplay first, and any form in which it appears is linked back to that original copyright, which I have as the owner of the story, in which my own smaller production company, which we use sometimes to make films. I've given permission, express permission of rights for that production company to utilize that copyright to be able to go forth and finance. So it's a very specific example of copyright which I'm using and choosing to exploit on my own God, because I own the copyright of it. I am the originator of the authored work because I wrote the screenplay. And because I wrote the screenplay and because it's expressed and it's not infringing on the intellectual properties of anyone else, I can, state I have this. So going to your question, Lungelo, about this whole idea of financing specifically in South Africa versus financing overseas. So if you're financing overseas and you're financing a story or a script or anything that's something that you want to make into a film or a series, it is expected of you to have that screenplay or that pilot episode, to have that in place. Because you're going on something called spec. Spec is the name of the game for many, and I think you've heard the term before, right? So you're writing on spec, you're writing for yourself and so forth, because there are literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of screenwriters just like you trying to get the attention of financiers internationally. Financiers who are attending financing sessions with the London Film Festival, for example, et cetera, et cetera. And these, at a very minimum, to enter these pitching platforms, you need to have sent through your screenplay, which you've copyrighted. At the very minimum. Forget about story outline, forget about anything else. At the very minimum, around the world, if you want to finance a film, if you want to finance a series, you need to have a series, the original pilot teleplay or the screenplay. At the very bare minimum. That's the thing you get into, you have on your side, so that if you go and apply, for example, to London Film Arts, which I was very fortunate to be a part of a couple of years ago, the micro budget arm of it. If you go to that and you pitch to them, they immediately want to see your screenplay after the pitch anyway. And if you don't send it through to them, and you tell them, no, wait, sorry, I'm going to spend a year now developing the screenplay. Believe me, that interest is gone, because that executive has already left the company by the time you've already out the picture. So in South Africa, we have a very particular ability, thanks to government, to finance the development of something, the development of the screenplay, the series, etc. Remember, the NFVF will only finance two things in terms of development. One, the screenplay for a short or a narrative feature film, either it's a documentary or narrative, doesn't matter, but something that's a film. And two, the pilot episode of a series. They, and sometimes, same thing for, an animation. They will never finance something that's going to be commissioned. Because if your SABC, your DSTV, and so forth is going to be commissioning your series idea, your series, the whole thing, right? They're going to own the whole thing, because they're going to pay to take that and have it for themselves. So the NFVF is never, ever going to be allowing themselves to finance a project that's going to end up being commissioned, because that means that the violation of the idea of the NFVF and the DTI and the KZN Film Commission has been violated, because they're trying to finance you to become a sustaining film producer or a sustaining screenwriter who will then continue to create jobs thereafter in the industry. So when you are talking to the NFVF, or you're talking to KZN Film Commission, Gauteng Film Commission, etc., you're normally, if you're going to acquire financing for development, yes, you can usually just go with a story outline, a one-pager, and a pitch deck. A pitch deck, you don't need a pitch deck. They If you look at what they require for development, they actually are more than happy with just having a one-pager synopsis, a couple of things, an outline on how you're going to develop it, where's the budget for the development going to go towards, etc. They never ask for a pitch deck. They always ask for, what is the story? And your one page is more than enough. I normally send an outline and a pitch deck because it goes a long way in proving the credibility of your project. But I am also recognizing that South Africa is very fortunate to have your NFVF, DTI, KZN Film Commission, Gauteng Film Commission, because they're not asking you to have a screenplay beforehand. They're not asking you to have a teleplay, because their goals and initiatives are to develop new voices, to enable the injection of new blood into the industry, and to continually do that over and over again. That's why whenever you see the financing for the NFVF, it's not just young Black voices, it is all kinds of voices, young Afrikaans voices, Indian voices, or whatever. You see it. You see it all the time with the production companies that they do support, with the new development they do support. Proportionally, they by law have to, by proportions of our, how society is made up, they have to support X amount of projects from this group, from that group, etc., etc. And that's why they push so hard to go to the Northwest, to go to Northern Cape, and all of these different places to try and make films of it there, because their mandate is to develop the film industry and to develop the audience that enjoys films as a result. So yes, you can. If you're going to be solely financing your project from South Africa, for South Africans, etc., and you're not going to be commissioning it, you can go ahead and develop a story outline, test the waters, your NFVF. I recommend it because you want to get development funding, right? I, like Khalid, the co-chair of the Writers Guild, don't like to get financing for development. We like to get financing for production because we want to push our stories out there and make them. And for us, writing screenplays is sharpening our tool. It's elevating our craft. So we will always choose to write a screenplay than wait for someone to finance it, because we know that it's going to be able to achieve more goals that are more closely aligned with us as filmmakers by having our own screenplays, having our library of things that work, because we are internationally facing all of the time. We are internationally minded in that regard. That's why the things we make, if you watch our movies, if you watch everything we make, you'll find that, yes, they speak of the South African context, but they're very much geared towards trying to achieve international global cinema. And reality is, the rules of the game around the world are very different to the rules of the game in South Africa. So we hold ourselves to that standard. But if you are a filmmaker who wants to finance your projects here in South Africa, the traditional route, NFVF, DTI, all of those things, you're more than welcome to go do your outlines. But I can tell you one thing right now. The turnaround time for the NFVF financing development is so long and so chance-based that if you're going to wait for them to finance you developing your screenplay, you might wait years before you write that screenplay. So, write the screenplay, first and foremost.
Yeah, can I just jump in? Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sort of the same thinking that I'm looking at the international standards and striving towards those. And I hear what you're saying, and I understand that. So thank you for that. I guess then my question on top of that would be then, if I heard you correctly, you said you can only copyright the screenplay. You can't copyright the treatment or outline. And I'm saying this because the various screenplays that I've been in, my various shorts and my feature, I've actually, every time I go to the Writers Guild, I always copyright, like I'll copyright the outlines as I send it up to the NFVF to apply for development. And like you're saying, I apply for development funding, but I just write on my own because you'll wait for years and years to get a yes. But I always copyright the outline, the second version of the outline, the first draft of the screenplay, second draft of the screenplay. But I basically saying, is it a futile exercise before you have a screenplay or the first episode, like a script, I guess? Is it a futile exercise to try and copyright that completely? And then my final question would be, what's the difference between a non-disclosure? How do you get a non-disclosure versus just going to the Writers Guild and getting your work copyrighted? That's it. I'm done.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Those are good questions. And I think that these are questions that, believe me when I say this, everyone else has this question, because I can guarantee you that most screenwriters don't understand the copyright laws of South Africa, and they don't understand how powerful they actually are. You know, as a result of them, just by you creating something and then putting it out into the world, you are, you are the owner of that literary work because you live in South Africa, because you created the work in South Africa. South African copyright law guarantees that you are the owner of that authored expression. So I'm going to, hopefully I can share this. Hopefully it has the answer over here, to help you understand this, because I see there's another question that's come up that's actually tied to this idea of copyright, and I think it's worth us looking at it so that we can understand in detail as to copyright. Okay, but before I do that, you mentioned NDA, right? So an NDA is and so forth. Look, a good NDA in South Africa, you'll usually be able to find it online and a template for it and everything. But if you go into the Writers Guild website, let's just double check to make sure that I am not talking out of my ass with that. You go to the Writers Guild website, you go to resources tab. If you click on non-disclosure agreement, there we go. A good non-disclosure agreement for you to use. And any producer worth their salt, if they want to speak to you, if they want to work with you, they're more than happy to sign a non-disclosure agreement because it protects them as well. So in case you come back to them and you say, no, you stole my idea, etc. It's like, no. This was, when we signed this thing, I said that this particular thing that you have over here, this expression of it, I'm admitting that this is your idea. What we went on to make afterwards doesn't look anything like your idea, just because you may have had the genesis of an idea, which then made your idea. No, we had this conversation. It's not hearsay. I remember signing this NDA. There's a protection for them as well. So any good producer with their salt wants to also sign an NDA just to protect themselves as well in this regard. So Writers Guild website, under resources, there's a good NDA for you to use over here. It's not watertight, no NDA on, no contract, no thing on earth is watertight. There's no contract or legalese, anything that's going to give you something that you can't argue about in court. But a good NDA, with a respectable producer goes a long way. And like I said, the Writers Guild website has the resources because this is something that comes up all the time. So Copyright Act of South Africa, which is something that has been ratified with the Berne Convention, which is an international copyright thing, right? Basically, it goes down to what is a literary work or form of expression of creativity by a human being. So there are a couple of things: literary works, musical works, artistic works, cinematograph films, sound recordings, broadcasts, program carrying signals, published editions, and computer programs are all things that can be copywritten. So in South Africa, screenplays and teleplays fall under the category of literary works. Completed films that are then displayed on a platform or a public venture or whatever are considered copywritten to the production company as a cinematographic film, cinematograph at least, the French term for it. So a screenplay and a teleplay are literary works. They are proof of an authored creative expression by a human being, and an authored creative expression in its totality. An outline is not that. An outline is not a authored expression of work. It is simply a bunch of ideas. There isn't a story being told with dialogue, with actors, with characters, and all of these things that indicate a literary work is being produced. In fact, what you're doing is just outlining the possibility of a literary work. That's why you can't copyright it in South Africa, which is why I recommend that you always write something, whether it is a first draft or a final draft, and something that you are more than happy to say, this is something that I can stand by as copywritten, because it's going to save you one day when the copyright may be in dispute. All right, Lungelo, hopefully that makes sense.
Yes, thank you very much. That's awesome. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
Good luck. I hope that this is also a bit of a wake-up call for anyone who wants to be a screenwriter, you need to first write the thing, guys. Please write the thing first. It's your best protection, even if it's shit. Write it, register with the Writers Guild, get it right afterwards, do an outline, get it financed, etc. But write something. The whole point of you being a screenwriter is to be a screenwriter, to write. So that's your first and best tool. Going to the question from Dalia's side. Right. I hopefully I've answered Dalia's question in addition to answering Miguel's question. It all comes down to the fact that I own the screenwriting, I own the copyrights credit for it. And as you can see, I've been quite naughty and not removed copyrights, Log Life Productions for this opening page, as you can see over here, because I am not the creation of the knowledge of screenwriting or pitch decking. I'm just giving it to you. So please ignore the copyright, particularly here. But hopefully, Dalia, I've answered that question for you. I'm just going to, okay, great. So Dalia, thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important question. I think in the realm of outlining pitch decks, screenplays, you definitely need to have your screenplay written beforehand. Even if it is the pilot episode, have it written, email it to yourself or mail it to yourself or email it to someone else so that there is a record and proof of this existing before it was exploited by someone else. That email or that postage stamp or that envelope, whatever it is, that printing out of it could save you one day. Okay, Neliswa asks, when you get that T date, how much information do you divulge? Do you share your one-pager? And what if they ask for it? Neliswa, I'm not 100% clear on your question. And I guess I think if I understand correctly, what you're asking for is, if you are lucky enough to be able to enter a conversation with a producer or a publisher, another publisher, a distributor or anything like that, and they say, okay, send us something. How much information should you divulge? You should divulge only the amount of information that you feel comfortable with. And if they ask for a one-pager, yes, sign an NDA with them first. And I would also make sure that your one-pager doesn't have everything. It doesn't have all of the story, etc., etc. It has enough for them to be able to make a further decision on whether or not they want to proceed. But I would never, ever, ever send a screenplay out to anyone who has not signed an NDA or is not someone who will help me make this thing happen and is not going to be legally held liable for having seen that this copyright exists before they maybe then take it and exploit it for themselves. Unfortunately, we have many, many cases in South Africa where we have a lot of screenwriters who did the wrong thing and sent out their screenplays to people they didn't know, or producers who they never heard back from, and then they saw their stuff on screen. But unfortunately, once your screenplay is out there, even if you do that on the copyrights, nothing stops a producer, an unscrupulous producer at least, or an unscrupulous filmmaker, or an unscrupulous platform from just changing the names, changing some of the scenarios, changing some of the scenes, and then creating something that they call their own. So share only what you're comfortable with, and try to get an NDA in place first. Okay, so Trevor asks, I may have missed this in previous session. What are some of the differences between pitch decks for films versus series? Having your first season mapped out in broad strokes is a must for series. Does that come into your pitch, in-person pitch at all, or do you rather set it up in the story and keep them wanting more? So yes, this was definitely something we spoke about in last week's session. But reality of the conversation is, if you are developing your pitch deck from an outline, first and foremost. So let me just see if I can get this little document, which I think might help you. Usually helps everyone. If we can see the major difference between a film and a series pitch deck, in fact, possibly the only difference between a film and a pitch deck series, is how much detail do you go about particular elements. So in a film pitch deck, by the time you have gone through your synopsis and perhaps some of the cast or whatever, the world of the story, because film is limited to from 90 minutes to 2 hours, 3 hours, or whatever, the story that's in the synopsis, the story that's in the log line, and so forth, is so particular to a character, is so particular to the journey, the arc and so forth of that character, that just by saying the log line, you've already got the inciting incident and the arc and the journey that that character needs to take, you know, in the realm of a film. We're not talking about War and Peace, of course. We're talking about or even Ocean's 11. We're talking about films that are very singular. You know, Marriage Story, for example. Marriage Story, the pitch deck is, I mean, I guess the log line for that would be a couple who no longer communicate and, you know, respect each other, realize that their marriage has come to an end, and as a result of that, need to find a way to best raise their son in the aftermath of their ruined marriage. Something like that, right? Because it's a film, you're watching 90 minutes to 2 hours of just that. That's the full total expression of it. Saving Private Ryan, you know, a army commander must marshal a band of men to save the life of a private lost in the wildness of World War II France, and save his life from the Germans. That's all you're going to be seeing, right? That's the whole idea. So in a nutshell, you've got both the characters, the story, the inciting incident, everything. And we know that for the length of a feature film, you're going to be experiencing that story. When it comes to a series, as you've mentioned, you're going to have so much more than just that. You're going to have things like season overview, episodic breakdown, pilot episode breakdown, character arcs, all of these things that you need to put as part of your series pitch deck, because those are the things that you're going to be leveraging throughout the massive development of the multiple episodes of your story. You're not just developing one 90-minute to 2 hours, you know, blast of story, hyper concentrated, hyper tense, and everything, you know, in the space of feature film. You're leveraging something that's meant to be watched over a much longer time period, a much longer cycle, if that makes sense, and maybe even watched and rewatched. And that's, and audiences watch that stuff really only for the characters and what happens to the characters. Unlike film, which is the domain of the director, series are the domain of the writer producer. So what you put into the story as a writer, your expertise, your craft level, and your software, all of these things, all of that stuff leads to things that can be utilized on set to tell a multiple week story or a multi-episode story that can be telegraphed over X amount of time, etc., etc., etc. Or, you know, a new fresh episode every week, and all of that stuff. All that groundwork has to be done in order for the story to survive the brutal onslaught of a new thing needs to be given out every week. A new thing has to be given out every episode, or in the streaming world, a new thing that needs to be binged multiple times. So the key difference between a film and a series pitch deck is how much detail you go into with regards to character. Do you express character arcs and do you speak about that stuff and things that can be shown over multiple episodes? Or, you know, in the case of a film, do you want to really talk about character when already the idea of the log line and the synopsis is the character for that space of 90 minutes to 2 hours? Or so that's the one thing, character. And really, when it comes down to series, it's this idea of, okay, that's great. Give us an overview of the whole thing, and then tell us what's happening each and every episode. Just broad strokes. It doesn't have to be anything intense. Just broad strokes, what's happening in each and every episode. And if we actually go to the Stranger Things, and Stranger Things pitch Bible, this accurately captures that. Look at how much detail is spent on setting up the structure, which is, you know, episodes 1 to 3, this is what happens. Episodes 4 to 6, this is what happens. 7 to 8, this is what happens. And the characters. The characters are explained in detail. In fact, they are given specific references as to what's happening in their story. Film references is what's happening into the kids' story arc, for example. So Hellraiser speaks to what happens with the story unfolding in Stranger Things for the kids versus what's happening for the teenagers, where it's Firestarter that's happening, you know, and the adults are experiencing Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. I mean, it's Jaws. This pitch deck, you know, unfortunately, don't look at the images. You know, what's on the right hand side is first, followed by what's on the left hand side of the next image. So if we see kids over here, we see Stand By Me. If we see Outsider, we see Firestarter. And Outsider being 11, if we see the teenagers, we see Nightmare on Elm Street. So we know for the teenagers, they're going to have a very particularly different aspect of storytelling applied to them versus the kids who are experiencing something wonderful, something wondrous, but we Stand By Me. But the kids are experiencing Freddy Krueger versus the adults who are really experiencing Jaws and like the horror of facing monsters and all that stuff. So you can see how much detail they've gone into character and story arcs, because these are the things that are the marker of someone serious enough to carry through a season or developing a season over a year or however long it needs to be able to make something that will be watched over and over again as a series narrative versus a film where 90 minutes to 2 hours, give me the life of this person. Having your first season mapped in broad strokes is a must for series 100%. It's something that's known across the world. Does that come into in-person pitch as well? Yes. Yeah. What I showed to you in this session was a film pitch. It wasn't a series pitch. A series pitch is definitely going to have all of this, the season outline and all of that good stuff. It's going to have that stuff, but more importantly, you might actually have a lot more words attached to that in-person pitch to explain what's happening in the episodes, explain what's happening in the series, the season's overview, as well as the character arc and so forth. But you are going to be doing a lot of work at that point to be setting up the story. And you normally find when it comes to series pitches, they're not 20 minutes. They're sometimes usually about an hour and a half. You have the time to go through everything. So especially if they like your idea, they really want to see the full thing. But you'll have the time. You'll have the time. I don't want you to worry about it in that regard. But if you're making a film, there is no time. So you have to be quite authoritative and so forth and visual, because film is the domain of the director and the screenwriter supporting the director's vision. So you have to be able to present with visual imagery, both as a screenwriter as well as a director. Trevor, I hope I've answered your question. If you want to type in a yes or no into the chat or quickly unmute yourself, I hope that I have answered that question. Okay, thank you, Trevor, and good luck. I want to see your stuff on screen. I really, really do. Last question, I think, from Tinky. What about screenwriting competitions? Can they steal your script too? Okay, so this is a gray area. It really is. It's a gray area because it depends entirely on who's hosting the screenwriting competition. So if you are, for example, going to Silver Scampius or the Writers Guild Muse Awards or so forth, and you're submitting, or the Academy Nickel Fellowship, and you're submitting your script to them, they have very particular rules as to naming your, the name on your script, etc., etc. But they also recognize that if you've copywritten, and you will have in South Africa by default copywritten your script, that they as an organization have it on themselves not to divulge information that not to divulge your script out into the world and to give it to people who are going to probably exploit it. And that's, again, because the Writers Guild, the Muse Awards is run by the Writers Guild. You're giving it to other writers who hopefully are not trying to steal your idea and claim it as their own. But most writers in our country, especially those who are holding themselves to the high professional standards of the Writers Guild holds itself to, are not going to be doing something like that. It is very awful to do something like that to another person who's worked their life and their heart and soul into creating a script. So you will find that that's not the case. Silver Scampius is a professional organization that's run on the behalf of MultiChoice, particularly CakeNet. They also, in many ways, hold themselves to that. But a screenwriting competition run by the international things, if it's not the Academy Nickel, if it's the Blacklist, for example, if it's not the Academy Nickel or the Blacklist, or a few other ones, if it's not a reputable like Tailor or anything like that, I would be very, very wary about sending my script out to an unrecognized competition, because you will find people who are not going to respect South Africa's copyright or your copyright and might take your story and rewrite it for themselves and have that produced online. I hope I've answered your question, Tinky. I normally say that if you're going to be applying for a competition, You're going to be sending through your script for that, and you want feedback from them. It should be a reputable competition, and it should be somewhere where you can reasonably get a good turnaround on why they judge your script this way, that way, you know, assessment rubric and everything like that. And normally that's a very small handful of competitions around the world, of which the Writers Guild's Muse Awards is one of them. Lugelo, go for it.
No, just quickly on the chat box I put there that I've always been told, use filmfreeway.com. That's a university trusted platform. I've never applied on for screenplays or for my short film to go anywhere without using filmfreeway.com, because it's free, it's very easy to use, and every single festival that is on there is vetted by the website to make sure that there are no shenanigans.
Yeah, filmfreeway.com. Filmfreeway.com is also the platform in which you can submit to international film festivals and local film festivals and so forth. If you have a film or a short film that you want to have screened at a film festival, so yes, very much the screenwriting competitions that are on there. It is a lower chance of meeting unscrupulous individuals who are participating in these competitions and who might steal your script. So yes, that's definitely a good thing. But I would tell you, and I'm going to be very explicit about this, in terms of competitions that are out there, the Writers Guild Muse Award is a very good competition. Silver Scam Fierce is, even though I've never participated in myself in it, it's always, there are many screenwriters that I know have come through from there, and they've done incredible things with the opportunity to be given to them there. And when it comes to the international competition, Blacklist, Academy Nickel. Those are the only two that I've ever heard of being as credible and respected by the international producers and international platforms, like your Netflixes and your Amazons. Those are the only two that I've ever heard of that have the street cred to be able to, you know, when you get an 8 or a 9, it means something. So the Academy Nickel and Blacklist internationally and locally, the Muse Awards and Silver Scam Fierce. Having something come through from the Muse Awards, and if you are a finalist and so forth, it can be something that goes a long way to your storytelling and ability being recognized as credible. And it might open doors for you at Film Mart, for example, to have you know, a further conversation with the producers and so forth. I'm just trying to see right now if Stephen is here. Stephen, because you've won the Muse Awards before, and if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, would you like to talk about your experience with regards to the Muse Awards and if it made any, you know, tangible impact on your career, or are you still trying to find the right producers? Are you still trying to do those things? But having the Muse Awards, having won the Muse Awards or being a finalist on it was a very personally empowering thing. Okay, hopefully Stephen's able to answer that at some point, but I will be on the standby for him. Hopefully he's able to answer it all. We've only got 13 minutes left. Zakona says, how would you rate Stage 32? Do you recommend sending your ideas and scripts to this platform? They were sending emails requesting scripts during the strike, so I was not wary. I think you were wary about that. Yeah, so Stage 32 is not a Stage 32 is a private platform. Privately run platform. It's not affiliated to it's not affiliated to the Academy, for example. It's not affiliated to the Academy of Motion Picture and Sciences. It is not affiliated to the greater film industry in America. It's not affiliated with the Writers Guild and the Producers Guild and the Directors Guild. It is a private venture that is founded by this idea of creating a social network for filmmakers. It is not a vetted and, you know, government held organization, if that makes any sense. I do not recommend sending anything other than to the reputable sources. So again, I mean, the reputable competitions and the reputable platforms. Again, it is the Academy Nickel Fellowship and it is the Blacklist, and not the other nonsense. There's another Blacklist that's it's out there. It's nonsense. It's the one that's, I think it's BLK. You know, you'll find it. If you have to search for it, you'll find it. If you search for it on Google. So those are the only two international ones that I can recommend to you. And of course, you know, submitting your script via Film Freeway to Telluride, to Sundance, to the Sundance Incubation Hub, to Realness Institute as well. Realness Institute, whenever they have their calls go out, this is also a great place for you to possibly earn development and, you know, financing and so forth. So look for the calls that come through from the IPO, NFVF, Writers Guild, Realness Institute. These are great places for you to develop your craft and for your stuff to be recognized and possibly put in touch with you know, with the platforms. So these are the only places that I recommend that you send anything to if you're going to be engaging on competition level or an incubation hub level. So reputable film festivals that you've access to Film Freeway, the Academy Nickel Fellowship, Blacklist, the Writers Guild News Awards, Silver Scampius, and of course the traditional way, you know, the NFVF, financing from the NFVF, Gauteng Film Commission, KZN Film Commission. If you are someone who wants to grow and learn and wants to be a recognized screenwriter in the future, find out about the business, find out how it works. We are very, very fortunate and blessed in South Africa to have these funding initiatives by government to help new screenwriters come to the fore. So I would do my research on that. And best part about this is that the Writers Guild website has a great repository of information for you to look at, you know, to help you with helping you find the context, helping you find the information that you want to get. So it's the WGSA resource booklet. And if we go to film festivals and markets, there's a great repository of film festivals and markets that you can engage with to help you grow as a screenwriter. Some of them, unfortunately, do not exist. If I'm understanding correctly, this booklet was drawn up right before COVID hit at its worst, and some of these things don't exist anymore. But it's still a great resource for you to utilize. And I think that it does speak of the let's just try to see if we can find it. There we go. The useful industry organizations, of which Gauteng Film Commission, IPO, KZN Film Commission, NFVF, and so forth are parts of, and they have their own funding initiatives for developing screenwriters. So be on the lookout for calls from these groups, which are reputable groups. Okay, great. And I see Lisa says, thank you for that. I was about to send out to the, yeah, I can't express as much as I've expressed that sending your documents and things out there without the proper protections in place could be honestly throwing your baby out and throwing your baby out and letting it be eaten by the wolves that are out there. So please don't do that. Please do the best thing you can and copyright your stuff. Create your story first and foremost. Make sure that it's an authored work, something that you can go forward with and have claimed as being a unique expression of yourself. And then from there, develop an outline, develop a pitch deck from there, and create something. Go out there and create things. I'm going to actually, I'm going to recopy in the documents which I had previously sent, which can help you to do that. Number one, the first document is the outline document, which I've freely made available for everyone. It's a personal document that I use. It was a document that I gotten years ago, which I've updated as time has gone by. And I had mentioned that at the end of every session, I was going to be sending it out. So again, if you haven't received it before, here it is again. Please utilize this document. Make something. Go out there with this document, develop it further, and from there, you'll be able to create your pitch deck as a screenwriter, or at least have the information needed for your pitch deck. And then, of course, a little brief document that speaks about the one-page document, really. And then what is generally considered a good set of outlines and points needed for a pitch deck. And here we go. All right. Any last questions? Anyone? Jump in. No mind whatsoever. Last comments, last questions. Who attended yesterday's Mbizo? If you want to speak about that as well, you got 5 minutes. You can jump in with that. But anyway, any last questions? Go in. By the way, Trevor, I hope I've answered your questions. I haven't seen a response from you regarding that. Is it, are we clear? Are we good?
All good. Thanks so much, Thabiso. Really,
No
really
problem.
grateful answer. Yeah, thanks so much.
No problem. Hopefully, in looking at the documents I just sent right now, some of the information that you were asking for could be clearer as well. I tried to, with these documents, whether it's a series or a film, etc., I try my best to make sure that everything is there in the outline, and then I pull from the outline to make a pitch deck if I need to make a pitch deck. But hopefully these documents help you and whoever else is part of this call. Okay, hoping that Stephen can answer. I guess not. It is what it is. All right, guys. Because there are no more questions, is it Nomzakelo? Thank you, Thabiso. You're being far too kind. You really are being far too kind. I've been thankful that you've joined every one of these sessions. I hope that you've learned and you've grown from it as well. I hope that you're willing to do the hard work of being a screenwriter first before you think about producing or directing. If you are a director, do the hard work of being a screenwriter first, because it's only going to make everything else. Okay, Stephen, you are online. So would you like to talk about your experiences, or are you going to say, no, I reserve my right to keep my silence?
No, I threw everyone into a frenzy yesterday when I just said the word producing. So I'm scared to talk.
No, man. No. Go for it. How was your experience with the Muse Awards, the aftermath of it? Did you find it personally fulfilling? Did it open some doors for you, or are you still, trying to find your way?
The Muse Awards specifically, not really, man, to be honest with you. Nothing happened. It was probably, I think, more going to the markets that really, I mean, it's cool to have a calling card and saying like, hey, here's like one of my credentials, like one of my wins or whatever. That's cool, but it's just one of the things that you have to add. You have, like you said earlier, you have to kind of do the work, build the repertoire. You have to go out there, get gigs, do work on other people's projects, create short films, do whatever you can, and then build that up and use that as clout when you're pitching. So yeah,
I mean, I completely agree with you. Look, I'm not speaking as the Writers Guild about this. I'm saying that my personal experience has been that working on things, creating them, putting them out there, and then reworking on new things, and then going forth, and this constant escalation, the constant moving forward, instead of waiting for opportunities, instead of waiting for people to come and tell us, here's now your chance and whatever. That has been the way you can become a filmmaker, or you can become a series maker, or anything like that. It has not been random chance shots at entering competitions in the screenwriting. No, it's work. It's always been work, and it's been going out there and getting information, being part of conversations, creating networks, meeting producers, finding out about the industry, going to all the sessions of all these film marts. A film mart is about 200.
Yeah, I would say, like it's no one thing that's gonna kind of open the door for you. It's cumulative, it's a whole bunch of things, and then you look back and you're like, oh, I actually have a career here, So I think that's how it is for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And if you are a young person, if you qualify as from the ages of 18 to 35, and you are someone with a story who wants to, see that made, and you want to be a screenwriter, leverage the youth filmmaker competitions and the youth filmmaker projects that happen every year, thanks to the NABF and the different production companies that host them. Join it, send something through. You never know if your life can change from it. I mean, that's literally how my life changed. I got into one of these things. I was able to write it, but I was because I always wanted to direct, and I came in as a director with a screenplay that I'd written. I was able to leverage that and direct my first short film. But that was my entry. That was my entry into the industry. I didn't have anyone. There was no mentors. I was not a part of the Writers Guild or anything like that. Like you all are. I had no information and I struggled my way through this industry trying to find any answers. And worse than that, I was mad enough to believe that I'm just a film writer. I was mad enough to believe that I could just make a living making films. And I committed that and I destroyed everything I possibly had because I was mad enough to believe that I was just going to be a filmmaker. And as a result of that, I am where I am right now. And it's not because I submitted to competitions. I did the opposite to that. I didn't have any money to submit to competitions. I had to work. I had to find the spaces in which I could work. And I didn't want to make TV series, so I never went to writing rooms. I just wanted to write. So I studied screenwriting. I studied films. I studied as much as possible. And I learned through the making of films how to write them as well and how to get better at them. And no one's ever paid me to write a screenplay on commission. I have only ever written specs, and I've only ever directed things that I've made. And I've now gotten to a point where I'm working on projects where I'm able to bring in or able to train the screenwriter who's on the project, so I can have something that I can make something with. But waiting was always going to be death for me in my career. I was fortunate, very, very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. But I do recognize that if I didn't have the amount of experience or the screenplays, the 50 or so screenplays that are sitting in my folder or in printed somewhere, if I didn't have that, having written just from love and written from growing and learn, I would never be where I am right now. And I think, Stephen, you want to mention something like that?
No, that's all. I fully agree with you, man. And thanks for sharing that experience as well. Because I think a lot of the time people see the successes, but they don't see the grind, to get there. So I think you sharing that personal journey, I think, is important for people to get that context as well. Because now everyone sees Prime, they see, oh, that Netflix logo, it's nice and shiny in the front of your new film. And they're like, oh, damn, what did this guy do? What shortcut did he take to get there, But not everyone knows the grind that goes on in the background. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, right? I hope I'm always honest with you, Steve. I hope I'm always honest with the Writers Guild. But fundamentally, whenever I'm watching films and making films, I'm still the kid sitting down, watching The Good, Bad, and the Ugly with my dad, and watching him watch Good, Bad, and Ugly, and really just being blown away by the three-way shootouts, by the Tuco saying this about Blondie and all of that. I'm still that kid, and I write from that. I write from this want and love of film to show to the people I care the most about, and I think that's been the thing that, if anything, that's the only shortcuts I ever had into this thing, and it's from a place of love. So it's only from a place of love can you learn, can you grow, can you go beyond waiting for someone to give you an opportunity to take initiative for yourself. But I'm going to tell you guys something as well. This is the last session we have on pitch decking, right? From my own personal experiences. You are living in a world where you can make a feature film on your phone, where you can just get people around you to come together and make something. Don't make a short. Go and make a feature film. Tarantino speaks about this at length, and Christopher Nolan as well. The way they got into filmmaking, they made their own feature films. Tarantino hated the first feature film he made. It sucked. He threw it away, but he learned so much from it. So when he came down to making Reservoir Dogs, he knew what he was doing. Nolan, of course, made his first movie, The Following, every weekend with his friends and his family. And actors he could pay for. He worked throughout the week to pay for the film stock and for the actor for that Saturday, for that Sunday. And he made that over a year. Made that feature film. But he was working as a commercials maker and all of that stuff at the same time. So he was leveraging experience he could get during the week to survive, to make the feature film on the weekend. And he spent a year of his life with his wife, who was the producer, Emma Thomas, and they made something. And it traveled around the world. It became the thing. It became his calling card. Memento came afterwards, and then went on to become possibly the biggest filmmaker in history, bar James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. He's up there with them because he spent the time over a year to work on the weekends. We don't even have to buy a film stock anymore. You got a phone that can write, it can shoot, edit a film, and have it output. So you have what you need. Please don't believe you need someone to tell you how to do it. You can do it yourself. I truly believe it. And you do that more than often, you're going to find yourself in a much stronger position to get financing from the NFVF, and you would have built your own producers in the people around you. And then you might not need to go to a full mart to find a producer. You already have the team around you that's needed to make the big things. Anyway, that's it. I appreciate everyone who's come through in the past 3 weeks for this pitch decking session. I hope that you go out there and you make things. Multi-choice is desperate for your content and desperate for in a pitch deck form or some form or another. So please do not be shy. Go out, create, write, shoot, edit, repeat. That should be a motto: write, shoot, edit, repeat, and keep doing that over and over again, and get a portfolio of work behind you that speaks to your ability as a screenwriter. Make sure it's all copywritten first and foremost, and make sure you write the first draft before you even think about an outline or a pitch deck or anything like that. And go to full marts, go learn as much as you possibly can about this industry, about the business of filmmaking. Maybe you are the person who's going to become the writer producer, the writer director, or just as a screenwriter. And at the core of it, just try and make something and keep trying to make things. That's how you get into this industry. That's how you become self-sustaining as well. And the name of the game for the future of this film industry is self-sustaining, because that's what you're going to need to be if you want to be internationally competitive. But I just want to thank everyone for joining the session today. Thank you very much to the Writers Guild for having the platform for something like this to happen. I do believe that the future is, I'm going to be specific, I'm going to be very, very, very controversial. I believe the future is film. I'm going to always fight for film, and I hope that you will as well. Even series that look like films, I'm fighting for that as well. So I hope that many great stories come out from this particular group of people who've sat through this, and whoever's watching this recording who's inspired to make things, please make things. Thank you very much, everyone. Highly appreciate your time, and please be safe and write well. Oh, I have one last comment from Sav, actually. Thanks again for years I've heard that worrying about one's work being stolen was the mark of an amateur, and yet the subject has been raised at every screenwriting workshop, and privately fellow participants have told me about this happening to them. So glad to have some confirmation. Sav, I'm sorry, it is a reality. I remember from the days when we were talking in the writers calling that this was a problem. Please don't stop writing. I really, really want to see your story out there. And you in particular, you have my details. Whenever you want to pop a chat, just please email me. More than happy to. Writers calling. Hopefully one day we'll bring it back. But thanks for coming through. I've seen you participate in every session. Everyone, thank you again. Please get some rest. Enjoy the rest of the day or rest of the evening. And see you guys soon.